what's up, everyone? Sam Shaw here, founder of Wall Street Mastermind. I'm excited to be back with another client interview for you guys. And today we have Cris on with us, which I'm really excited to have him on because I think he has really come a long way in this recruiting process. Really ended up with an amazing offer, uh, honestly, from a school that we don't see too many offers from, at least at this level. And so I think he really performed well. And I wanted to get him on here to talk to a lot of you about just kind of how he was able to do that. But also, I know a lot of you might also go to like non-target schools or places where it's hard to recruit from. And so hopefully you can take away a lot from this conversation that you can apply to your own process as well. So with that said, Cris, I want to, again, thank you for taking the time to be here with us today. And if you don't mind, maybe give us a more in-depth introduction on who you are, what's your background, and kind of what that's like, and then like we can dive into kind of the more specifics of your recruiting process.
Yeah, sure. So I'm uh, I'm from non-target school, and the recruiting process is pretty much very hard for non-targets already. And I'm also international, so I'm a Brazilian student here, came here just for college. Started working at 14. I did digital marketing for a while. I did trading at 16. At 18, I invested in the stock market during the COVID crash. So that was basically my first exposure to analyzing companies and knowing, trying to do valuation, and I knew I had a lot to learn. So that's pretty much when I decided to go to college. Got accepted into the best college in Latin America, but then I decided to come here, take my chances to go to Wall Street. And that was pretty much my pitch for my parents, right? Did the entire application process, SAT, TOEFL, everything in 2 months. Got accepted in a few schools. This school that I am now pretty much gave me the most scholarship, decided to come here. And basically joined, I founded a club here in the school, grew the club to 240 members. And in my second year, that's when I decided to go into IB. So compared to all the kids here in the US, I was pretty late in the process, and I knew that I had to catch up. I started working really hard to land a private equity internship to recruit for IB. And then after 9 months, I was able to land a private equity internship. And after, I think in May, that's when I joined the Wall Street Mastermind.
Yeah.
And in 2 months, I got my offer to join BMO in their summer Netherlands program.
Gotcha. Okay, that's awesome, man. Um, so you say you got an offer from BAML, right?
Yeah.
If we go back to some of the things that you just talked about, like obviously your school being a non-target school, it's harder to like get into investment banking from there. Like, can you give us a sense for like how many people from your school get into banking, or like when you were networking, like were there a lot of alumni that you could reach out to, or kind of like what was that like, I guess? And like where do most, if there were bankers, like where do most of these people work at?
Yeah, sure. So my school is very international. Um, for international students, we have a lot of limitations, especially with CPT, OPT. Uh, we have a selected number of banks. So I think this year, from all the people that I talked to, I think only GSMS, BMO, and Deutsche. I don't know if people consider Deutsche a bulge bracket anymore, but like those were the only ones that were recruiting internationals, from all these. Some elite boutiques as well. But in my timeline, elite boutiques weren't really recruiting anymore. So um, basically, I know one more person in the entire history of the school that got into IB out of college. And he was 1 year ahead of me. He was 2 years ahead of me. So when I joined here, he already went through the Deutsche DB Achieve program from Deutsche in his
Mhm.
sophomore year. That was pretty much the feeder for him to keep going back to their summer analyst program and join IB after he graduated. So
Mhm.
outside of that, there's another person that got to BlackRock. She was pretty much like the best student that the school ever had, I think. Some people go to Goldman in their Salt Lake City office, and they do, let's say, like ETFs or the global markets program. And then after 2 years, they change offices and they go to London or anywhere else, and they can join IB. But it's
Mhm.
kind of like an internal recruiting process. So there's another step there, and you sacrifice kind of like 2 years, which would be the 2 years for private equity recruiting as well, right? So
Yeah. Wow. So those are like those are like basically the people you know of that got into basically reputable firms that are at like that bulge bracket or tier one level, essentially. Like you basically listed them on like one hand, is what you're saying.
yeah, I don't know more than five. So those are the people that I could reach out to. And we have multiple, we have schools all around the world. So we have people in Dubai, people in London, and even those places, they don't place really well. So um, my chances weren't that high, especially as an international. And I just knew that I had to outwork everyone else. And my response rate for emails was very low as well. I think it was like 0.5%. So I was thinking like probably if I was in a target school, that would be much higher. And I just said, well, I'll send out like 3 times more emails than everyone else, and I'll get the same amount of responses. So that's pretty much what I did.
Gotcha. Wow, that's very inspirational, man. I'll be honest, like for the longest time, like I hadn't even heard of your school. And then I think over the years, uh there were other students from your school that had like applied to work with us at Wall Street Mastermind. And I think historically we've like kind of just I think we've turned down a lot of people from your school just because we were like, I don't know if we can get these people into banking, right? Like, so one thing that a lot of people might not know is that we don't actually just take like just anybody into our program. It's like when we get on a call with you initially, like we try to assess your situation. We learn more about what it is that you need help with, what your goals are. And to your point, like being an international student also makes it more challenging. But like, if based on that conversation, we don't feel confident, relatively confident that we can help you get in, like, then we wouldn't even work with you. So like, you're actually the first person from your school that we've had in the program,
Oh,
and
wow.
we've worked with we've worked with like over 1,000 students at this point, right? And collectively, our students have come from, I don't know, over 100 different schools, if not more. And so like to be the first person from your school in our program at this point is like usually pretty hard to do, but somehow you did that. And not only that, but you definitely got an amazing offer, which is why I said like, you must be doing something right. And so it's
Yeah,
just like big congrats to you on that, first of all, because that is literally the definition of just defying the odds, right? Like when you think about being able to count the number of people from your school that get into the top tier firm on one hand, and you being one of them, like that's definitely something to be really, really proud of. So big props for making that happen.
yeah, thanks. I think Matt was really convincing as well. I was kind of dubious, I think, when joining the program, and I was kind of, well, should I do this? I don't know if I have this amount of money. And then Matt was very convincing, and I thought, well, they probably accept a lot of people because they probably don't know my school. I didn't know like you'd rejected other people from my school. People here are very well off financially, I think, because they're international families. People here have private jets, mansions. There are people here
Wow.
from Mexico that are literally like in um, they have like those gangs in Mexico. I forgot the names, cartels.
Cartels.
They are from those, and you don't want to mess with them as well. Develop a huge network of people in all parts of the world. So probably have like 20 plus countries that I can call someone and then I can crash there.
Yeah.
But outside of that, they're not very driven because they're very well off financially. So people
Mhm.
like me that came here because of the scholarship, and there are a few people like me here, um, but usually these people are the most driven ones, right? Because you don't have a second shot. If I don't land something here, I have to go back, and I don't really want to go back. So
Yeah. It sounds like you don't really fit the typical profile of like the people that go to your school, is kind of what it sounds like. Um, so like I'm curious, like what made you pick the school? Is it just the financial aid you said? And like also when you were choosing the school, um, did you already know that you wanted to pursue investment banking going in, or I guess you said that, you say you didn't. You said you didn't realize that until sophomore year. Is that right?
Yeah,
Okay, so like you weren't really thinking about like, oh, is this school going to like set me up well for recruiting or whatever? Like that was probably the last thing you were thinking about, essentially.
yeah,
Gotcha. That makes sense. And I feel like that's pretty normal for a lot of college students. It's like when you're just entering college, like you don't even know what investment banking is, right? And it's like after the fact, when you're already there, sometimes like once you realize like, oh, this might not be the best school for recruiting, it's like at that point you have to play the hand you're dealt, and it's too late to change that. So you just kind of have to like do the best you can with it, right? Um,
exactly. Yeah, I think that's what happened because um, for me, like being international, I didn't know the system at all. So I'm from Brazil, and in Brazil, you basically only get internships in your third year. So I thought the system would be similar here, and pretty much you have to get an internship in your freshman year if you want to be very competitive. So I didn't have that at all. I didn't have any mentorship from the careers here as well. Um, it's not like we were a feeder like Harvard or Wharton. So you don't have like people that you can look up to and say, well, like this is very interesting. And I know someone. I talked to many people from Wharton and they pretty much said, well, I didn't even want to go into investment banking, but that was pretty much the clear path to success. And it was so easy to get in because like I did an interview and I got a super day and then I got in. So I said, well, that's pretty unfair, but I didn't know coming here. And the trade-off of going to the best university in Latin America and going to a non-target year that no one knows is pretty big. So I'm pretty glad that I made the jump, but I was pretty sad to have a very successful life over there. I don't have to pay for college in that college, so basically 100% scholarship. Here I only have around 50. So yeah,
you
the
mean back home? Back home, you would have had 100% scholarship.
Yeah, because it's a public school. So the best schools there are public
Mm,
in terms of universities.
yeah,
And I was in a very competitive high school as well. My high school was considered number one in both national and international.
yeah.
People there go to MIT, Harvard, if they're international program. I wasn't. I was in the national one. And it's basically the same system as Korea and China. You do a test, a very hard one, like 10 times harder than the SAT. And you get placed into the best universities if you score very well. So I got enough to score into medicine. So it's pretty much in for any economics that I wanted to do. Um, and if you go into those universities, it's just like a feeder, like to Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan over there. And you're pretty much set as well. But
Yeah,
I didn't know about investment banking. It's not a big thing there, just like it is here in the US.
yeah,
No
for
one knows
sure.
about investment banking.
Yeah, I mean, look, going to a school like Wharton, obviously you're just surrounded by other people that have all done banking or wanting to do banking, and so like environment obviously matters, and it does give you either like a huge advantage or a disadvantage. But like like you said, the trade off is if you want to go to Wharton, and if you don't have financial aid, like you're probably paying like $80,000 a year all in, right? And so like not everyone can afford to do that, right? And so a lot of people are like you that we talk to are like you where they pick their school based on like what was the most affordable to them, which is like very understandable, right? Especially given how ridiculously expensive college is in America these days. But I guess, you know, I'm curious, like, so you get this Bank of America offer, right? Which not sure if that like exceeded your expectations or was kind of what you expected or how you felt about it. But like, what did it feel like when you got the offer? Like, can you kind of take us back to that moment?
Yeah, sure. Basically, I came here. My pitch was that I wanted to go to Wall Street, right? I didn't think investment banking was. Uh, I didn't even know investment banking before I came here. So the reason I came here was basically to go to Fidelity because I read a book from Peter Lynch called One Up on Wall Street, and I
Mm,
thought, well, I want to work in the same place that this guy worked because he's so amazing that I want to be there. And there's no Fidelity in Brazil, so I had to go. I had to come here, and I applied to Fidelity my first year. I was rejected because they asked if I was international. They
mm,
said we don't hire international students.
mm,
That's not true. I had another person doing the same program. He got in, but my recruiter, I got unlucky, and the recruiter didn't like internationals for some reason, and she always asked this question. The other one, he's at Fidelity right now doing his summer internship. So um, I was pretty unlucky on that sense, but pretty lucky consider all these things now that I joined the program, and then I have a much better offer than I would have on that moment. But I joined the program thinking I'd go to a middle market because of the timeline, right? I joined in May. I was pretty late in the process, and I went through all the modules really fast because I knew I was late. So in 3 weeks, I finished all the modules, and I didn't have all them marked. And I remember you guys always saying like, "Can you finish the modules?" You're pressing me on this, and I said, like, I finished the modules already, but I still want to go back to them. So I always unmark them. And at some
Yeah.
point, I felt very comfortable and I marked all them right. And the next week, that was my demo interview. So in 2 months, I sent, only in June, I sent more than 1,000 emails. Only,
Wow.
only May, I think. Only May, I sent more than 1,000 emails. I used the software to send 400. Didn't go very well. Because I got blocked from Barclays, I think.
Mm.
And I basically started sending all them by hand. So every single day I'd send 20 to 30 emails by hand. Um, and then by the end of the month, I had so many responses, like so many responses. I'm saying like five out of the 1,000. I had five, and then I used the snowballing strategy, right? You refer people, you ask them to refer you to someone, and then I talked to 20 or 30 bankers, which is pretty much on the lower end, but I think for a month that was fine.
Yeah.
Uh, and then I got a call someone from BMO. I don't know if I got a referral, but in the next day, I pretty much got my hire review. And out of that, I got into the process, did a super day, went pretty well. The coaches really helped me in the days prior to the super day. Um, and when I got my offer, that was pretty much DMZ called me in the next day. He said, "Well, you're the best candidate by far. Like it wasn't even close, and I really want to extend an offer for you, and I wanted you to join my group." But he was in the real estate group, and I wasn't really interested in real estate, so I told him, "Yeah, I'd love to connect with people, but I'm really interested in tech, and I was also interested in M&A and FSG." So I basically, and he said, "Well, if you want me to connect to someone, feel free to reach out." I sent out an email to him. At the end, I never got connected to anyone, but I think I'll just send a follow up and he'll connect me with someone there as well. So my interviews were really nice. Bank of America, they had the best interviewers by far,
Mm.
uh, the nicest ones. And when I got my offer, I just called my mom and I said, "Remember that I told you that I'd be on Wall Street after 2 years? Yeah, I'm going to Wall Street." Because out of all my friends, to be honest, out of the thousands of kids that I know, none of them made to Wall Street, right? None of them were ambitious enough to come to the US and drop out everything, all the comfort in Brazil, to come here. And all of them were from richer families than me. So um, I was almost always the one having to sell candies in school to kind of like have what you eat on the lunch breaks.
Mm.
I used to sell my umbrellas, so like people here ask me about the why I walk in the rain, and I say, well, I'm not above the rain. I always sold my umbrella so I could make some money, and I'd sell them for 3 times more. I'd buy them for like 10 reais and sell them for 30, and then I'd use the money to buy other things and sell for a higher price. So I
Yeah.
always walk in the rain and never have an umbrella.
Dude, that's such an amazing story, especially the part at the end, but also just being able to make a promise to your mom and then actually follow through on it and live up to your words. I think that's got to be an amazing feeling. I mean, what did she say when you told her that, or what was her reaction?
Yeah, I almost cried because I don't know if I should generalize this, but in um, my family at least, like they're Japanese descendants, right? So they're pretty strict. They weren't strict and they were strict until I was 10, and then after that I was pretty much free to do whatever I wanted. Um, and they had this trust in me. So that was pretty much what allowed me to come here. And she always thought I was kind of like a genius for some reason because I was always top of my class and I went to all the math Olympics you could possibly go to. And I remember because we didn't have money to travel, I in the math Olympics, you basically have to go to Japan or somewhere in Europe to do the final phase, and you have to pretty much do all your expenses by yourself.
Mm.
So I never did the last phases, and I always wanted to win a medal because that's like an international medal. It's pretty much as high as you can get in math. So I never did the final test because of that. And my mom, I don't know, when she said that she said, "Wow, you really are incredible." And then that was pretty much the time that I almost cried. I didn't cry, but it was pretty tough when I told her I'd be going there. And Bank of America is probably the only bank that she knows here. Probably Bank of America. She doesn't even know Goldman. So yeah.
That's awesome, man. I'm tearing up a little bit hearing this story, but that's awesome. I guess I'm curious, like, you know, what were you doing then for like did you do anything? Did you try anything on your own as far as recruiting prep goes prior to joining Wall Street Mastermind? Because like you said, you joined somewhat late in the process, right? Like in May of sophomore year, right? Where like a lot of the firms are kind of already done hiring at that point. And so, especially for an international student, like a lot of the bigger firms that typically sponsor right then at that point. So prior to coming to us, were you already attempting to apply and get interviews on your own, or and if so, like how were you going about it? Like what resources were you using, or is Wall Street Mastermind kind of like the first thing that you did as far as preparation goes?
Yeah, so this is another sad story, to be honest. But I did the only course that I did before this was the Corporate Finance Institute course, which I
Mm,
never finished. I never got my FMVA. But I remember decided that I wanted to go into asset management, I think, in my freshman summer. So I went back to Brazil. Um, and in the middle of the summer, that's when I started worrying about my career because I thought, well, if I have to apply in my third year, because I still thought the timeline was the third year, I have to decide now. So I pretty much started doing all these things from there, and I didn't have any resources. And I joined Corporate Finance Institute, which I think they have like the FMVA program. I did 21 certificates only in the winter break. So like I was studying around like 12 to 16 hours a day. That's pretty much like I was waking up. No one's in the dorms anyway, so I was pretty much alone here. And I didn't have anything to do. I just ordered in like once a day and I ate like the entire day. I don't know. Like I slept around like 6 hours and then I was studying for 16. And then the other two, I don't know, I was slacking. And then I got all the certificates that I had from CFI. That was kind of like my foundation to the investment banking process.
mm,
And I wanted to join private equity. I wasn't really aiming investment banking at that point because I thought private equity would be in a boutique would be easier to get in. Um, and I knew like I needed a foundation. That's why I did so much of the CFI. But that was pretty much all that I knew. And I started recruiting really for private equity around November or December of last year. So that was in my sophomore year. That was late even for private equity. So
yeah. So you
I just
recruited
was
for about like 6 months then on your own before you came to us, right?
yeah. So I recruited 3 months, 9 months in total, right? 3 months for asset management and 6 months for private equity. Yeah.
Yeah. And
And
then
then
so what was that process like, I guess?
I think I watched a lot of YouTube videos and they said, reach out to the companies. I sent really long emails like, why should you accept me? And what did I do before? Never really worked. But
Hmm.
then I feel like I had one or two calls with a few local firms and I never really got the interview because no one knew my school. So that was basically my process. And I started applying, and then for some reason I got some interviews. I got one at Rockpoint, which is like the biggest real estate private equity firm in Boston.
Hmm.
Uh, and that was the only one that was a big name. And by February, when I accepted my private equity offer, I did a lot of like I think I did around 20 interviews with boutiques, but that was all by cold emailing only.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. So sounds like you recruited for a long time on your own. Wasn't as successful as you would like to be, but what then ultimately made you want to join Wall Street Mastermind? And also, like, you kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier when you were talking about this, but like you were a little bit dubious about joining, and you kind of assumed that like, we probably just let everybody in, and it also sounds like based on your upbringing and your background and whatever, like this was a pretty sizable investment for you. So it wasn't like you're not one of those international students with a mansion or whatever where like money
Yeah.
doesn't mean anything, right? And so like what made you want to join this? And then also, I don't know if you invested in this on your own or if your parents helped you with it, but like if it was the latter, like what was that like having to kind of like convince your parents about making this investment? Can you kind of just like talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so basically we have that dividend income portfolio, right? So we have a 12% dividend yield every year that's tax-free in Brazil. So it's a really good investment, besides the capital gains. So when I came here, basically with that portfolio, my parents can retire. Um, but investing in college, because the cost of living there is much lower than here, you can pretty much retire much less money, right? Investing in college would pretty much burn almost the entire portfolio, so I had to land something big over here. Um, and but they could retire, to be honest, and they always wanted to invest in my education. It's because I never asked before coming here. I never asked about anything um, related to like never spend a lot of money in video games and all this stuff or like candies when I was a kid. Never asked for anything. So the only thing that they really invested in me is pretty much education. I'm really grateful for that. So I always went to top 10 schools in Brazil. Those are largest expenses by far. And so joining the program wasn't really hard on that sense. But I didn't have all the money up front. So I got the help that you guys have for the contract. I don't remember exactly what was it, but I think it was like 6% of the initial salary.
Yeah, it was like you're talking about like with the income share option,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So let me get this straight. You're saying that your parents had enough to retire as they wanted to in Brazil, but instead of just retiring, they took their retirement money and helped you pay for school here. Is that what you're saying? So then because they did that, you felt like you had to make something out of that and make sure you get a really, really good job so that their investment wasn't wasted. Is that what you're saying?
yeah. Not only that, that was a good part of that money was my money, right? So the money that I made before. So I feel like hard work money is always harder to spend, but I knew that education would come first, and I really wanted to be an investor. My pitch was basically I want to go to Wall Street because I want to be the best investor I can possibly be, right?
Mm.
So I thought the only way I could achieve that was coming to the US. And I really had no idea of how much school. Um, I thought the American dream was kind of like the apply to schools as well. I think it was just very, um, how they say this. I wasn't really thinking it straight when I thought about this, but I thought opportunities were pretty much like in all schools. Prestige didn't really matter. I don't know why I thought that. But when
Mm.
I came here, I just had a reality shock.
Got it. Um, so I guess like you come into the program, you make this investment, you come into the program, like what now that you're on the other side, right? Because you went through like 6 to 9 months of recruiting on your own prior to joining Wall Street Mastermind. And then
Yeah.
you also joined Wall Street Mastermind, and then like pretty much in like 2 months after joining Wall Street Mastermind, you got your offer. If you think back and you compare those last 2 months with Wall Street Mastermind compared to like the first 6 to 9 months when you were recruiting on your own, like what would you say was like the biggest difference? Because I think a lot of people, when if they're on the outside looking in, trying to figure out if like Wall Street Mastermind is something that they should do, like I think a lot of people have trouble visualizing what kind of difference it could really make. So what would you say to people who are not sure about if this even makes a difference, or how it's different? Like, what would you say as someone that has gone through it?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the amount of information you have. If you go to a target school, you have a lot more information than a non-target. So you probably have a pipeline and you know like the entire process. I didn't know anything. So the program with the process, and I think two things are the biggest, there are two things that are the biggest impacts in the program, which are basically all the modules. I kept repeating all the modules. I think I watched all the, you answering all the questions, the investment banking questions, like more than 20 times probably.
Wow.
Uh, because I always study walking. So I take a walk and I walk like sometimes I walk for 3 hours because I'm studying. And I love watching videos instead of reading because I don't know, I retain more. So that was real like the best format for someone like me. And also the coaches, right? So reviewing the resume that my structure wasn't really good before coming to the program. And then having the assurance, I think, is the biggest thing. Like someone that already went through the process and they help a lot of people get into these firms. They're reviewing and giving you this uh, kind of like checklist and giving you the confidence that you're doing the right thing. So, well, with this resume, you can get in. You're gonna go through the ATS system, and like in the interview, like these are the points you're lacking. This is what you have to work at, and that's what I had to do. I had the mock interview on Saturday, so I got my, I knew I had to do the super day on Thursday, and my
Hmm.
super day was on Tuesday. So from Thursday until Monday, I got out of the internship. Besides the weekend, I got out the internship at around 6, and then from 6 until like 5 or 6 in the morning, I was studying all the time because I was so nervous. Like I knew I had to land this job, so I started studying from 6 until like 5 or 6, got out of the campus like at 3 because was expelled. Um, and basically I was working on my behaviors mostly because I did um the the mock interview with the coaches, and they basically pointed out a lot of things that I was lacking. And I
Hmm.
said, well, I can't really like this for the interview. So I sent all of this in the coaches channel. They helped me with all the answers, and I kept practicing. I think I recorded like more than 2,000 audios to for the interview. So that was basically like I had to take a an anti-inflammatory 1 day prior to my interview because I my throat was hurting from all the speaking. I was speaking alone like for I don't know how many hours, right? But like yeah, my throat was just inflamed.
Wow. Um, I mean, what stands out to me about your story and what you just said is that I think your work ethic is amazing. And it's because obviously we worked with a lot of students. And so I feel like we have a good sense for, we worked with a lot of students that are really hardworking, but like, I think you're definitely at the high end of that, in terms of number of emails you sent, number of times listen to like the trainings where I'm answering interview questions, number of like audios you recorded of yourself delivering the answers, practicing the answers, like just the volume of the reps that you're putting in is, I would say, higher than 99% of the people. And so I guess it's not a surprise why that managing director would say what he said when he called you, which is that you were the by far the best candidate that day, because I'm pretty sure that no one else that day actually put in that much work. Because that's really that's a lot. And so that's a testament to just how hard you work. And I think also just the entire sense that I get from this entire interview that we're doing is that you coming from, the background and the upbringing that you had, um, you just you just work hard, like, because you don't really take things for granted. And it sounds like you always had to really work for what you had. Like you're like out making money selling umbrellas at a young age, walking in the rain. Like those are now experiences that everyone has growing up. And but I think that's also kind of shaped you into who you are as a person today, right? Which like long story short, it gave you a lot of the I feel like a lot of the qualities or characteristics that one would need to be successful in life, and I feel like you have that in abundance, basically.
Yeah, but I feel like it's much more glamorous when we talk about it, but in the day to day, it just sucks, right? When you're prepping this much and then like I think I said from 6 to like 6 a.m. I was pretty much studying all the time. But I was sleeping 2 hours a day, so I felt like dying the entire day. My internship, every time I had some time that I wasn't staffed with anything, I was sleeping in. And I remember that week as well, I slept in a pretty important like private equity firm that we were talking to. And then I got a message from from my manager and like 3 calls. Um, so it's much more glamorous when we talk about it, but in the day to day, it just sucks.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
and
um,
yeah, I felt like giving up all the time, to be honest. Like I feel I could study for 3 hours. After 3 hours, I didn't want to study anymore. I
yeah.
just kept pushing.
You felt like that, but you didn't, right? And also, I don't recall ever seeing you complain about anything in like the Slack channel, for example, right? So like, um, I think like, and that's not always the case. Like a lot of people, they do complain a lot as they're going through this process, and so um, ultimately, like, yeah, it's not glamorous and it does suck, and I think there are a lot of sacrifices that have to be made to get to a place that's not that most people can't get to, right? Like if you want to be extraordinary, you have to be willing to do things that other people aren't willing to do. Otherwise, if it was easy, then by definition, everyone would already be doing it, right? So I really think that for you to work as hard as you did, and I actually thought it was kind of funny earlier when you said that we would do the weekly check-in with you, and then it would look like you haven't done anything, and it was in reality wasn't that you haven't done it, but it was like you went back multiple times to redo it.
Yeah,
Um,
it's frustrating, to be honest.
no, that was it's funny because so like for the listeners that don't have context, like basically every week we'll like send like an update on what percentage of the program people have completed, and also we'll compare that to what percentage they completed as of a week ago, and then so that kind of tells us how much progress they made over the last 7 days. And then that's kind of like, and then we'll check in with people depending on how much progress they're making. A lot of times like if people are not making any progress or they didn't make much progress, we'll like check in and make sure like, hey, is there anything you're stuck on, or is there anything you need help with, or how come you haven't been able to make more progress? And so that's kind of like the context. um and a lot of times like when we see that people haven't made much progress, it's because they actually haven't made that much progress. So like when we message them, they'll usually have some excuse for, oh, why they didn't do anything this entire past 7 days or whatever, right? And like, once or twice, sometimes like, hey, life happens, we get it, right? Some weeks, like maybe you're really busy, maybe there's final exams, you just couldn't get to it. That's totally fine. But sometimes there are people that just have a different excuse every week, week after week after week after week, and like eventually they just stop responding because I think they probably kind of feel ashamed because like the coaches are checking in with them every week, and like eventually you run out of things to say for like why you're not doing the work, and the reality is like you're just not doing the work, right? Like you're just procrastinating, or you can't bring yourself to like work that hard. And so when in your instance where you're like, oh no, I've actually gone through all the trainings already, like I'm just going back through it a second time, that's why like the progress bar is so low, or I'm going back through it a third time, fourth time, like that's actually something that we don't hear very often. So like um
Yeah,
so anyway, that was just like funny. This is a funny story from my perspective. I was like, again, it just goes back to the point about how your work ethic is really I want to say better than like 99% of the people that we've seen in the program, which um is probably why you've certainly exceeded our expectations. Like I said, you're the first person from your school that we've accepted in our program. And, I'm pretty sure when Matt talked to you, he probably wasn't telling you that, like, oh, yeah, if you come in our program, you're definitely getting a board bracket bingo or whatever, especially given like how late you were coming in. But like, yet here we
Yeah.
are, right? Um, so again, just major props to you, man. Like much respect. I always respect people who are willing to put in the work to get the results that they want. And win or lose, like they gave it everything they got, and so that's worthy of respect. But I guess on that note, like this is a good segue to my final question, which is
Mhm.
um aside from just working hard, which obviously is like a given, um, what would be like the best piece of advice that you have for people who are, maybe currently going through recruiting still, or maybe they haven't started, but they're about to start, they're going to be going through recruiting. Like, is there something that you learned along the way that just whether it's from someone else or you just figured it out on your own, but anything that you learned along the way that just really helped you tremendously or made a big difference for you, that you can share with other people?
Yeah, there are many things, right? I think the most important one is uh, figure out talk to a few people that are also recruiting at the same time, and then you pretty much can motivate each other like by talking about all the struggles you have. And I was talking to two other people and helping them go through the process. So we were recruiting together here in WSM, and basically every single time like we didn't do well in an interview, we would just like say whatever we wanted to say to each other, or like just say, "Well, can we hop on a call?" Even before this call here, I was talking to another student here in WSM, and I got in the Bulge bracket, and he didn't. And he has even a much better story than me. So I was like, yeah, you're like, I really want to help you recruit as well, and that's what we've been doing the past few weeks. Trying to help other students as well to recruit. And when you give back to other people, for some reason, like the world just happens like this, and if they have good intentions, they're gonna give back to you at some point.
Hmm.
Uh, I feel like that's not something that people usually do. They usually try to recruit alone, and it just sucks. It's much harder.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, yeah, another thing is basically trusting the process and not seeing the statistics, right? My stats were basically like IB, like in the entire investment bank, they hire 1 to 2% of people. But in the investment banking division, it's probably the most competitive one, so it's even less than that. And
Yeah.
then like non-target, they hire much less than target schools, and then internationals are like less than 5%. So I think like the stats were like 1 in 10,000 that make it from like my position. And I didn't see the stats. I only saw the stats after recruiting, but it was kind of crazy. So don't look at the stats and just go through the process and trust the process. And if you keep doing what you're doing, eventually you get results. Um,
Can you repeat those stats again? You said one in how many from non-target, one in how many from international?
so I don't know. I just saw this online. So IB pretty much like we only know the stats for the entire bank. So it's not like 1 to 2% or 3%, depending on the bank. So IB is going to be much less than that, right? Because we have like sales and trading, asset management, and IB are those are the most competitive ones.
Yeah.
So that's less than 1% that get it. And then you have internationals. I think it's less than 5% that make into these high finance jobs. So
Mm.
it's kind of like considering 5%, that's like 0 point something percent already. And then you have non-targets, which is it's probably increasing, but like it's probably like 10% or less than 10%, right? I don't
Mm.
know. And then you add all them up, and then you see like it's 0 point 0 something that make it. So it's kind of crazy when you think about this. So don't
Yeah.
think about stats.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Yeah, I mean, stats are just stats. At the end of the day, it's like your outcome is going to be binary. It's either like you're in or you're not in, right? A lot of people like to like, oh, like what are my chances of success? Is it like 90% or like or what's your program success rate? Is like, okay, even if our program success rate is 90%, doesn't mean that your success rate is 90%. It's like you're either
Yeah.
going to get in which case it's 100%, or you're not going to get in which case it's going to be 0%. And like, if you didn't get in, and at the end of the day, I told you, well, our program success rate is 90%, you just happen to be the other 10%, like you're not going to feel any better that it was 90%, right? um and vice versa too, right? Like so anyway, I think like stats are just that, like don't ever let that be the reason that stops you from pursuing what you want to pursue. But I think more importantly, to your first point, I think like the point about like finding a community and having people that you can work with together to like help make each other better, I think that's really, really important. And then also like I really like your advice about just like paying it forward. Like now that even if you've gotten a job, you're trying to pay it forward to other people in the community. And you know, and you just never know how that's gonna come back down the road. But that's also what I love about the community is that I constantly see people doing what you're doing now, which is like helping other people. And it's not just like everyone looking out for themselves. And I think that's really, really nice to see, right? So
Yeah,
um
I think like I have one more or less thing that I wanted to say.
yeah,
Uh, that's basically when I'm talking to someone that's probably like a sophomore or a freshman, they're trying to decide if they want to go into IB, right?
yeah,
Um, and I say like it's a very competitive process, and if you don't have a really good reason to go, uh, I don't know if it's the right path. I think you should probably figure out if you're willing to put in the work and if that's literally what you want to do. So think about you doing Excel models and like PowerPoints and analyzing transactions. And I feel like in a high level, you kind of have to know, kind of have to see the news and see and think, well, I want to be doing one of these transactions one day.
yeah,
If you don't, it's not worth it at all.
yeah,
Um, yeah, and people like in IB are very ambitious. If you're not ambitious in life and you don't prioritize your work, pretty much I prioritize my career above everything. Like I'm not the party kind of person. I don't drink. Like I drank when I was younger and I shouldn't. But like these days I I don't drink at all. I drink in events just socially if I need to. But
yeah,
you have to sacrifice pretty much everything else. And if you're willing to do this, that's pretty much like what Steve Schwarzman says as well, right?
yeah,
He sacrifices pretty much everything, and you just know that you have um, kind of have this in the back of your mind that you think you're going to be successful. You don't know why, but you think you're going to be very successful for some reason. And if
yeah.
you feel that this, you're probably going to be successful in IB.
That's really good, man. Absolutely. I definitely agree with that. So, awesome. Well, I know we've been on here for a really long time, so I don't want to hold you up any longer, but you know, for those of you who are still listening, if you find yourself coming from like a position where, you know, the odds are stacked against you, maybe you come from a non-target school, maybe you're also an international student, maybe not a lot of people from that you know with your situation has been able to, you know, break into banking successfully, and maybe you just have a lot of doubts about whether this is even possible. Maybe the statistics are not in your favor, like whatever the reason may be. You know, if this is still something that you know you really want to do, and if you're the type of person who has really good work ethic and you're willing to put in the work, I'm not going to say that you have to have the same level of work ethic as Cris, because I think that's really his example is really quite exceptional. But like you definitely still need to have a good work ethic. But if you have a good work ethic and you just want to get the guidance so that you're not like all of your effort that you're putting in is not like misdirected or like, you know, used in the wrong places, then I want to encourage you guys to, you know, reach out, book a call with our team. We're happy to hop on, just do a free strategy session where we talk to you, learn more about your situation, see where your goals are, understand what the timeline is, understand what challenges you have, what you need help with, and then like based on what you discuss with us, we'll kind of walk you through like if or how we might be able to help you, and if we can, like what that will look like. So either way, like you know, at a minimum, you'll walk away with just more clarity and like a game plan on you know what it is that you need to do from a recruiting standpoint. And then if you want to do that with our help, great. If you want to do that on your own, that's totally okay too. But you know, it'll be a valuable call. So if that's something that you guys are interested in, feel free to go to www.wallstreetmastermind.com/apply. The street's abbreviated to ST, so it's wall stmastermind.com/apply. And that's pretty much all I got. So with that said, Cris, thank you again so much for taking the time to be on here with us today. Thank you for sharing your story. It's really, really inspiring, and you know, always love seeing good people and hardworking people succeed in life. And I think you are a perfect example of that. So, I can't wait to see what you accomplish at BAML next summer and even beyond that. So, let's definitely stay in touch and keep me posted on how everything goes.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right, guys, we're gonna wrap it up here. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back with more of these for you guys in the near future. And until next time. All right.